Surprise! And welcome in to the last bonus off-season episode of Stone Cold Astros. I'm Brandon Strange. I'm joined by Charlie Palillo and Josh Jordan. Follow them on X at Palillo and at Josh Jordan 975. Yes, it is the last bonus episode because next week, season 2 premieres of Stone Cold Astros, and we could not be more excited to get this season going. And if you only knew how close it was to not happening, do me 2 favors. Let's bring some good vibes going for the home team by hitting like on this video right now. And if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button so you get all of our content all season on YouTube. The full version of the podcast is available in audio form right now at your favorite podcast app. Charlie, first, happy belated Valentine's. And second, Josh and I did a bonus episode earlier this week where I might have said something silly like, gee, there really hasn't been much news this offseason. And then Justin Verlander and JP France said, hold my icy hot. We found out JV and JP are both behind schedule. JP with inflammation and JV with a hiccup, he called it. So I'm assuming the training staff is hard at work telling him to hold his breath or drink with upside down. I'm more of a spoonful of dry sugar guy. So go ahead, comment section, go crazy. Charlie, after the Hader acquisition, the biggest question marks were really about the starters. And here we are. Obviously, each of these guys holds something different for this team. What's your concern level for the rotation as of now?
Concerns, a good word, especially this early, not panic. I go with the brown paper bag on the shoulder, 3 deep breaths, be hitting 98 in no time. In Verlander's case, and he's such a good conversationalist and interview, and I think pretty forthcoming as athletes go, and just casually saying, yeah, I had a setback and hiccups, and he's a couple of weeks behind, which I'm going to take. If he's a couple of weeks behind, he's not going to pitch until a couple of weeks into the season because he's 40. He's a man. He's 40. But as he noted, the body doesn't bounce back the way it did when he was 25, and you just can't mess with this, right? There's the long game. Sure, it'd be great if Justin Verlander's on the mound March 28th opposite Garrett Cole, Astros, Yankees, opening day, all the pomp and circumstance. But it's okay if Framber Valdez starts the opener and Christian Javier goes in game 2 and you're buying a little time on Justin Verlander because you'd prefer it not be because a shoulder concern, but saving a few bullets. Right, saving some tread wear on the tires at his age. Last season, had a shoulder issue. He didn't begin his season until early May and held up pretty darn well. It took him a little while to get going once he started pitching in games that counted with the Mets. But from June on, after he came to the Astros, he was by and large very good. Not 2022 Justin Verlander because it's sub 1% of pitchers in history who are going to do that. So Verlander's not a 30, 32 start guy anymore. I mean, he's just not. He made 28 and 27 starts the last 2 seasons, but he averaged right at 6 innings per start last year across his time with both the Mets and the Astros. I think if the Astros were offered 25 starts, 150 innings, they'd be all over it, provided Verlander's healthy down the stretch end of the year, and presumably you're playing October baseball, postseason October baseball again. I guess the one concerning element of this, the longer it goes on, and the Astros rotation has multiple question marks on different levels that we can get to as we go. But remember, if the Astros don't win that last game of the series in Seattle, the last week of the regular season, not only did they not win the division, they don't even make the playoffs. So, they're not the great team anymore of 103, 106, 107 win seasons. The margin of error was grossly reduced last year. And while they're still a good team on paper and absolutely a playoff team on paper, but the margins are not as wide for them. So Verlander turns out to miss 4-6 weeks. Maybe it's only 2 weeks, or maybe, look at this guy. He answers the bell opening day or in game 2. But the longer he's out, obviously it reduces the Astros' odds of getting into the postseason to make a run at an 8th consecutive American League Championship Series, a 5th World Series appearance. But I think Verlander's credit rating is pretty high, so he's not unduly concerned. But if you're an Astros fan, crossing your fingers isn't the worst of ideas.
I'm going to be looking at the bright side guy here with Verlander. Uh, First thing, Thursday, Brian McTaggart said he did throw a brief bullpen session. So that's certainly good news because he'd be shut down if this was something really serious. The fact that he's not just throwing off flat ground, he got up, through a bullpen session. To me, that's very encouraging. Charlie mentioned the injury with the Mets last season. That was actually, he suffered that discomfort in his final spring training start. And then a side session after that, it was still kind of bothering him. So I guess the positive is I'd rather have it really early in the spring than your final spring training start. You're more likely to miss less games, in the best case scenario. So that's a good thing. The other thing that caught my attention was something that Chandler Rome tweeted. The Astros opened with 20 games in 21 days before playing 22 games in 23 days from April 30th to May 22nd. So we were already talking about a six-man rotation possibly being an option because of the schedule. That's where this gets a little dicey, right? If Verlander's not ready to go, if JP France is still dealing with some issues, they're really going to have to get their depth guys to step up, through the early part of the season. So that's something to monitor. Hopefully they're ready to go, but we might have to see Ronel Blanco or, somebody like that. Who knows? We'll see how it progresses this spring, but something to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, the idea of a six-man rotation, killer bees, Blanco and Bielak, not thought or intended or hoped to be part of it. Well, Verlander and France are both a little slow getting started. That's 1/3 of your six. To throw another positive in, and, any little morsel this early before even a spring training games, it was just from a couple quick frames of video and one still shot picture that I saw. Framber Valdez looks trimmed down to me. Now, it could have been camera angle or lighting, or maybe there's less to La Grasa than there was last season. And I don't know if there was any cause effect to it. We know that Framber can be a little delicate between the ears at times. But he faded badly in the second half of the season and was horrible in 2 of his 3 postseason starts and not good in a third one. Well, if conditioning was a factor, right, for a guy who'd made a bunch of starts and thrown a bunch of innings over a couple of years, if he's lighter, general rule, I'll bet on the athlete who's in better shape than the guy who is not. And I'd say the same for Christian Javier, who I thought might have been a little over optimal weight. Again, maybe no causation or linkage, but I wouldn't bet against it. But Framber in particular, I say, whoa, it looks like he's 10, 15 pounds down from what I was accustomed to seeing out of him last year.
Well, we had conversations about that on this show last season. Not to mention the pitch clock also becoming a factor. So having to, pitch faster during games. And so we saw both Framber and Javier, as you said, kind of regress a little bit. Maybe there were questions about conditioning. So if Framber is indeed slimmer and trimmer, I think that does bode well for him, because you're quite frankly going to need both of those guys to beat your horses, especially if there's any questions about where, Justin Verlander and when he can start pitching and how effective he'll be and how many innings you can put on him. I think it's interesting that he does have that 140 innings, that benchmark that he has to hit for that third year to vest. Just by comparison, he had over 140 strikeouts last season. So if he's healthy, he should easily hit 140 innings, but we'll see. I want to throw this out there and kind of throw you a curve. Well, before I do that, before I throw the curveball, Spencer Arrighetti was also at camp. This was his first big league camp to get invited to. He talked about how it's just a thrill for him being a Houston guy, being an Astros fan, and now playing in Sugarland, being close to home. And, this is their next real prospect that's in the minors to come up. Any chance we see him, especially if there's any scuffling that happens or there's any more, atrophy within the starting rotation?
Yeah, I think it's on a dire need basis early in the year. But if you're down 2 guys, and if Arrighetti has a decent spring and is stretched out enough, Brandon Bielak competes. I just don't think he has the stuff to be an effective major league starter on an ongoing basis. The other names we haven't thrown in yet, discussing what was thought to be the 6-man rotation, if that's what they use over much of April or end of March and April. Jose Urquidy's coming off an injury-plagued and not very effective season once he got going, ERA over 5. Hunter Brown answered the call, right? He was healthy all year and basically remained in the rotation all year other than a skip over. But after the month of April, he didn't pitch like a major league pitcher, right? ERA well over 5. For the season, it finished 5.04, and July, August, September just kept getting worse. Well, Hunter Brown's just 25 years old. We know he has stuff. There's no indication he's anything less than healthy. So there's a guy who slots in at least as an innings taker in your rotation. Urquidy, if there's no sort of issue with him, that's a guy. Then you have Framber and Javier. So if you're down France and Verlander and you need 2 guys, I'm fine with going Blanco and Arrighetti rather than Bielak, unless they just feel, nope, Arrighetti needs a handful or 2 of starts at AAA before they just think he's fairly ready to go in the major leagues. When in doubt, my philosophy is go with the young guy. Give the upside play, and maybe you run into something.
I mean, who knows? We could see him. I'm with Charlie. I don't think it's super likely, but I didn't think we'd see JP France for most of the season last year. So, you know, your options are your options. So if that's who they have to go to, at least he have some upside. Blanco's one of those guys. Is he going to be a bullpen guy? Is he going to be a starter? Is it going to go back and forth? Sean Dubin's a name. We saw him a little bit as well. So, you know, they have options, but you don't love it. But the good news is if McCullers actually comes back, if Luis Garcia actually comes back in the summer, you're going to have a ton of starting pitching. I'll be interested to see how they organize that, who they use, who they go to, if there's a move to be made, because they just have so many guys. So that'll be something to watch. But early on in the year, it's a tough time to have these pitchers down and have so many games. And you can't afford to fall behind. We've seen it. Rangers are legit. So you better come out of the gates pretty strong.
As Josh mentions the Rangers, let me note that the state of the Astros rotation right now, I think it's better than the state of the Rangers rotation. They have Evaldi, who's phenomenal and was great in the postseason, but he had a very heavy workload. And this is a guy who's had 2 Tommy Johns and had to miss a month down the stretch last season. Then they have John Gray, okay. Dane Dunning, all right. And then, like McCullers and Garcia with the Astros, I mean, the Rangers are waiting on Jacob deGrom. They're waiting on Tyler Mahle, who they signed as a free agent. And they have not re-signed Jordan Montgomery. And I'm missing Max Scherzer. They're waiting until midseason on Max Scherzer. I mean, the Rangers are doing a little bubblegum and baling wire to their rotation going into the season as well. The Mariners, on paper, have the best rotation, it looks like, going into 2024 within the American League West. Their lineup, those another question. So, you know, it's like no one should be reaching for the ripcord or saying, Jim Crane, go sign Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery. We need starting pitching desperately. No, not desperately, but the Astros are more in the cluster of teams with pretty good pitching staffs as opposed to one that, whoa, that's one of the 2, 3 best in baseball, no doubt about it.
And quickly, a report came out this week that it doesn't look like the Rangers are likely to sign Jordan Montgomery. So that's good news if you're an Astros fan.
Indeed. And I've just quickly on this, I've seen some people on Twitter name drop Trevor Bauer, and he's been telling whoever will listen. And this last week, it was Theo Vaughn on his podcast that he's ready to be back in the MLB. Honestly, I would be very surprised to see him back. And I will tell you, I don't even want to waste a question on this because I know what the answer is, I think collectively here, but personally, I don't think there is a world in the multiverse in which the Astros or Jim Crane specifically are desperate enough to entertain that idea, much less pulling the trigger on that. That's going to be it for part 1 of Stone Cold Stros. To listen to the full podcast, we got some more stuff to talk about. So if you want to listen to that, it's up right now at your favorite podcast provider, or you can watch the rest of this conversation on YouTube as those videos release, and just check the Stone Cold Stros playlist on the Sports Map Houston page for that content. We'll be releasing those shortly. As always, go Stros.